the northernmost end of the Earth lies a frozen ocean encircled by a vast continent. It doesn't see the sun for 6 months of the year. The northern lights offer the only light in this permanent darkness. But for all their dancing, enigmatic grandeur, these lights cannot offer life any warmth. Almost the entire region experiences temperatures below 50 degrees Celsius. But this bitterly cold kingdom is also home to apex predators. This polar bear is hunting for seals on this frozen fjord. Polar bears must make the best of this time of year, because when the first light of spring appears, the sea ice beneath their feet slowly begins to melt. Their familiar silvery white world quickly disappears, and the change of seasons brings forth new life. When the sun returns to the lands of the far north, rock-hard glaciers gradually come to life. These travelers have journeyed thousands of kilometers to attend a summer banquet.
You see all the birds feeding in front of the glacier. Because you have the upwelling stream, the meltwater from underneath the glacier is pushing up all the nutrients to the surface, and that's why the birds are feeding there.
But for the king of the Arctic, hard times have already arrived. Around June, the Arctic sea ice usually begins to melt and may not freeze over again until at least mid-October. So during this time, polar bears must now face a relatively hard summer, since they need the sea ice to hunt seals, their main source of food. As you can see, around here there is almost no sea ice, so we can gather that this polar bear is in quite a difficult situation in terms of health or survival. Without the sea ice as a platform for hunting seals, it must work hard to find other prey. At this moment, it seems to have found something. The walrus, round and fat, with a pair of long tusks, is an animal unique to the Arctic. At 4 meters long and weighing over 1,000 kilograms, they look cumbersome, but possess great agility in the water. They're like the elephants of the sea. But once ashore, they appear somewhat awkward. We've now come to this walrus breeding ground. Walruses live around the Arctic Circle and are even larger than polar bears, weighing as much as 2,000 kilograms. It is now summer in the Arctic, so walruses often choose to bask on the beach.
If you have a look, they are moving the fins. They need to keep the temperature stable, and when they are warm, they open the flippers to send. They don't have blubber there, so they refresh the blood, all the veins and arteries that goes there, cool down. The temperature is lower there, so with that blood, then they cool down the whole body. Do you see the reddish?
Yes.
Yeah, that color is because they are full of blood there. They are sending all the blood to refresh. That's why they are pink. It's exactly as us when we are warm and we are very reddish.
Both walruses and polar bears dislike warm temperatures, but can tolerate the cold and are heavily reliant on sea ice. But what puzzles us is, why do 100 or so of these giants insist on huddling up together on such a vast beach? And why are they lying in a circle?
When walrus are gathering like that on shore, they protect each other. So it's not so easy to hunt a walrus. Adults around, the ones that are in the periphery of the colony, are always like patrolling and never like sleep very deep. So if the polar bear observed that all the walrus that were in the periphery like protected the center of the colony.
Turns out this is the walrus's defense formation. Polar bears are most fond of seals, but also frequently attack tuskless walrus calves when they are alone. For this reason, walruses must adopt a group defense strategy to protect their young calves. After swimming many kilometers, this polar bear has finally found a feast. In summer, the polar bear's belly is always rumbling with hunger. For the sake of safety, we always film from a distance. as danger approaches, guards immediately sound the alarm.
He don't want to fight with the walrus because walrus have very big tusks and they can hit him. And if they make a big scratch, he can die. So they are very smart. They don't take risks if they are not sure that they will succeed.
Walruses are just too enormous for a polar bear, making them very difficult to hunt. We see that the polar bear has indeed avoided this pack of walruses and is heading up the hillside. Perhaps it will then look for other prey. This will obviously be a difficult summer for the king of the Arctic. With their natural enemy at bay, the walruses can finally frolic in the water without fear. The largest of the bulls has come up with an easy way to get into the water. In the Arctic summer, the sun no longer sets in the west. Under continuous sunshine, the ice on the vast Arctic Ocean thaws gradually. It's as if the Earth has come back to life. There's life everywhere you look.
The Arctic tern is flying from Antarctica to the Arctic and back to Antarctica in the same year. But they only breed here, so it's very important for them that they get enough food to feed their chicks now. Very soon, maybe in 1 week, to get the little chicks from the Arctic tern, and they need a lot of food.
Setting off from the Antarctic, the Arctic tern flies over half the globe looking for food. And so begins their happiest time of the year. During mating season, it's only polite to bathe and prune your feathers. Sometimes, company is more fun than being single. These two terns move to the beat of the same drum. Like graceful ballerinas dancing on the water. From time to time, a group of them will dance together. And when a male meets his other half, he woos her with a gift. This uniquely romantic courtship ritual is called the fish flight. Terns are dedicated and faithful, committed to each other for life. Both parents share responsibility for hatching the eggs, and try their best to raise the chicks. When autumn arrives, the whole family will return to the Antarctic. Every year, they travel back and forth between the two polar regions, experiencing 2 summers in 1 year. No other animal travels as far as the Arctic tern. They spend their whole lives following the summer sunshine, as if called by the polar regions. They fly over 2.4 million kilometers in their lifetimes, equivalent to flying to the moon and back 3 times. The journey is long and arduous, but their delicate bodies demonstrate extraordinarily strong vitality. The Arctic summer is a playground for all migratory birds. One after another, great armies of them arrive, having migrated from the south. Towering behind me now, you can see a roughly 100-meter-high basalt cliff face. This famous Arctic cliff is called Alcafele, because every summer, over 60,000 pairs of Bruniches, Guillemot, live and breed here, momentarily filling the desolate Arctic with an abundance of life. Every day you can see tens of thousands of Bruniches Guillemots circling near these cliffs. The Bruniches Guillemot is the largest member of the auk family, but requires the smallest breeding territory of all birds. Referred to as the penguins of the north, they look very similar to penguins. And like penguins, are highly adept divers. The ice and snow between the towering cliffs thaws the quickest. And so, this is where the birds choose to nest. The red-orange-billed Atlantic puffin looks calm and peaceful compared to the noisy guillemots. During courtship and mating season, the puffin looks as if it has put on a little makeup. Its bill becomes even more brightly colored, and ornamentation appear around its eyes. Puffins mate for life. They like to build their nest together in holes in the cliff face. Tucked away like this, it's hard for their natural enemy, the seagull, to find them. The parents take turns incubating the eggs and feeding the chicks. However, most of the time, it is the mother who goes out, gathers food, and flies back to the nest. They beat their wings very quickly, up to 400 times a minute. 1/6 of the birds in the northern hemisphere breed in the Arctic. On the island, in the cliffs on a headland facing the sea, there are 2 deep ravines. They look barren and desolate, but a closer look reveals a huge breeding ground. These are black-legged kittiwakes. black-legged kittiwakes live out at sea, but every spring and summer they come to the islands of the Arctic Ocean to build their nests and raise the next generation. This breeding colony numbers in the tens of thousands. The expectant parents must search these precipitous, cramped cliffs for a space large enough to nest. And they won't hesitate to fight for their territory. When the location is too small, tempers inevitably flare and quarrels ensue. Like parents of every species on Earth, they do everything they can to produce the next generation. Once they occupy a niche, for the next few years, they'll return to the same nest. The kittiwake's name is derived from the sound of its call. The breeding ground is very densely populated. And the sounds of mating fill the air. Seeing others in the colony mating, they too are encouraged to mate. Biologists call this the lover effect. The whole colony is buzzing with excitement. Their sweet display really does seem to make a nearby unpartnered male envious. The breeding pair of kittiwakes takes turns hunting for food and raise their young together. Two young chicks vie for their food. Oh wait, there's a third little mouth to feed. Female black-legged kittiwakes usually produce 2 or 3 eggs in a clutch. But the smallest and youngest of the chicks is obviously unable to snatch food away from its older siblings and is sometimes bullied. Inevitably, there is competition between nestmates. Only the strong can rise above the rest in this battle for survival. This young bird is clearly the strongest in the clutch. It has all its parents' love and food to itself and is growing up big and strong. In the Arctic summer, the wind is still bitter cold. But a mother's love is always the warmest protection against the world. The female black-legged kittiwake protects its babies with its body, not only to keep them warm and keep out the cold, but also to keep them safe from natural predators. Like the Arctic fox. As the seasons change, the Arctic fox's coat changes color to blend in with the changing environment. The abundance of eggs and chick has lured the fox and aroused its appetite. But the mountain slopes are steep, making it difficult to get anywhere near the nests. The female fox begins to search the terrain, trying her luck. This chick's parents have gone out to sea to hunt for food and have yet to return. All alone, it seems to envy the affection between a neighboring mother and her chicks. But left to its own devices, the chick quickly becomes a target for predators. Lacking its parents' protection, it accidentally falls from its nest. The little chick is not yet fully fledged and has no way of getting back to the nest. Standing anxiously on the sidelines, you can only watch the tragedy unfold. The fox has found its lunch. And the world has one more heartbroken mother. Even on this bleak and desolate Arctic island, nature always proves to be survival of the fittest. In fact, the mother fox has a family of her own. Hearing their mother calling softly, the fox cubs rush to be first out of the den. After eating their fill, it's time to frolic and play. The peaceful tundra suddenly comes to life.
There are some Arctic fox cubs. I guess it's 4. 3 spotted and one completely brown living here. I guess they're around maybe 2 months old, like this. The mother is hunting on the bird rocks, trying to get some eggs or maybe some birds, some dead little birds, you see.
So they live here?
Yeah.
Yeah, because here is a lot of food source.
Yeah, it's a good place to get cubs.
But the smallest cub clearly hasn't received much food. It decides to come out and see for itself. But it seems to have taken a wrong turn and doesn't know which way to go. It searches on the ground instead. It's found something. Turns out it's just an empty eggshell. It remembers what its mother taught. Start in the valley below the cliff. Look for any fallen chicks. Sure enough, its efforts are rewarded. In a few months, this cub will reach sexual maturity. And such successful hunting skills will be essential to the serious matter of finding a mate and reproducing. At the other end of the world, this remote island near Antarctica has an unusually rich ecology due to the nourishing ocean current. When spring arrives, another group of animals are also hard at work, starting a family.